I think I see a lot of lawbreakers up in this house.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Pod Casty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Steven Soderbergh, where we watch every film directed or whatever else he does by American filmmaker Steven Soderbergh and explore how they speak to their moment in this one. The show's hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan. Jake, how you doing?
I am in hell. I'm moving.
Yeah.
And I thought the last time I moved that it broke my mind because I did it wrong. But I'm kind of relieved to learn that it's just the process.
Hey, that's like Kafka.
That is exactly like the process.
Yeah.
We're talking about Kafka today.
So what have been your trials and tribulations this time?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
There's just anxieties.
Yep.
Everywhere. I feel like a prey animal. I just feel I'm in fight or flight. I'm in flight.
Yeah.
Freeze,
Yeah.
really. I tried to install a Google Nest thermostat. I tried to inculcate myself into the Internet of Things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm worried that I've like broken the HVAC system because it made a weird noise. And the thing itself, it looks kind of like the big microscope from the end of the Steven Soderbergh film Kafka.
Okay.
It's all
yeah.
resonating in ways that I think are not a good sign. Anyway, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, doing normal. I'm back from being sick. That was just a little detour, so back on track.
Longtime listeners will be very disappointed that the sickness is not sticking around for a while. Joining us as well for this series, our new friend, the virtual assistant from the 2022 Steven Soderbergh film, Kimmy.
Hey, Kimmy.
It's Kimmy.
Hello, Ian, Jake, and esteemed guest. The two of you are sort of like if a cockroach turned into a guy.
That's...
See.
She's been
You've been
thinking
doing some
about
reading,
this.
Kimmy. This is wonderful to hear.
She knows everything. She's
sure.
consumed it all.
How come his name is Franz Kafka if he was from the Kingdom of Bohemia?
That's a good question. Yeah.
She's kind of in like Fozzie mode today.
She is a little bit. Yeah.
Waka waka.
That's right. Kimmy, do you know anything about Kafka? Do you have anything you want to add quickly and then maybe like disappear from the episode for most of it?
Kafka could have solved a lot of his problems by using today's sponsor, Rocket Money, to automatically turn off his subscription to being harassed and tormented by the absurdity of the state.
I'm feeling a little bit like a Kafka protagonist. I'm not aware of this sponsor existing. To whom is this money going, Kimmy? Do you use money?
Hey, come on. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm just playing around. I'm Kimmy. I live in the computer.
Okay. So, because we don't do ads on the show. So like that was kind of weird for you to like, I feel like she's taking liberties that I'm not comfortable with.
I'm making arrangements for you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Jesus.
This is going in a state account for us. I see. Thank you so much, Kimmy.
Oh yeah, because she's gonna kill us. Yeah.
I'll see you guys later.
Oh.
This bit is weird when you have a guest.
I couldn't agree more. Let's bring our guest.
Let's bring the real human in.
Our guest today. Oh, real quick. Another thing that's weird when we have a guest. If you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/podcastform. We talk about all kinds of stuff over there. We just did an episode on Havana.
We did.
We got another one coming out on A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
So it runs the gamut from things you haven't heard of to things we maybe shouldn't have talked about because we're like two white guys. Anyway, we're gonna bring our guest in. We're very excited to have him. Our guest today is a filmmaker, director of The Winds That Scatter, the 10-part series Miss Me Yet, co-director of the new film Failed State. Welcome to the show, Christopher Jason Bell. How you doing, Chris?
Hey,
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I love the term Fozzie mode. I never thought about it before, and I'll never stop thinking about it now.
Now you won't stop seeing it all around you. Yeah.
What's your are you a Muppets guy?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Moving on. How you doing, Chris? What's up? What's going on over there on the East Coast?
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's very windy. Always very windy. It was warm for a little bit, and now it's cold for a little bit. I think it'll get warm again for a little bit. And
they're telling us that more and more.
Everything is fine.
Whoa, that's the first I'm hearing of that. Ian, can we get a quick Oaxaca weather report?
Sure. It was warm, then it got a little bit warmer, and it's going to continue to get warm.
This is all.
Drought check-in March. We're recording this very beginning of March. There remain about 3 months of the dry season. They're already cutting water supply to the people of the city, so that's not good news. That's a long stretch we're looking at.
That's that's so bad. So you've started the piss thing. You're just like getting in on it early, and you're not bothering with the Waterworld machine at all.
Not yet.
You're just going straight.
I'm just
okay.
Wait, so Shine Bomb is not coming through. She's gonna put you in Costner world.
I mean, she's often trying her best, but this requires the kind of dramatic action that I think in pretty much every semi-neoliberal country in the world they're not willing to take, which is to say, you know what, in moments of feast, we will not be just giving you all the water you want so that you think that the government is really, really good. We're going to do the responsible thing and say like, hey, we kind of have to ration this water, spend some money on long-term things. These are not popular things for a government to do, right? But necessary. Wish these would happen.
Is it popular when she does the thing where she stands in front of all of the army guys like it's like the friggin' Hunger Games or whatever?
I mean,
you see that?
Let me tell you, basically everything she does is popular. Her approval rating is like 83%.
Yeah, she's at like 80. Yeah. God, wouldn't it be cool if we could get to like 40% approval rating of the show? Anyway, we're talking about Kafka today. This is a film by Steven Soderbergh. He made a film about Kafka. Not about Joseph Kafka. About Kafka. Yeah. They don't say his name.
No.
And so, scot-free, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
But first, we got to do our signature segment, the 2 questions. Oh, wait. I don't say that. Kimmy's, well, no, she doesn't, because, it is on the soundboard.
Okay.
It's time for the 2 questions, our signature segment where we ask each other 2 questions.
I didn't mean the soundboard. I meant she's real. Anyway, Chris, you were able to come up with a question for us this morning.
Yeah, I forgot we were doing this.
Now you're on the podcast. Now you're one of us.
I thought about it.
Okay, great.
Yesterday and Friday, but this morning I forgot. But because I thought about it already, does it matter that I forgot?
Sunday reveal. Sunday has been exposed.
Yeah.
People didn't know what day it was, and now they do.
You know? Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I did it again. But okay, so I had one, and I was like, oh yeah, they asked me to come on for a failed state, so I was thinking maybe this would be interesting. It's not really a question; it's more of a comment. So that's a little bit of a joke, but it's not in the form of a question. So when I was directing Dale in Failed State, and other times when I've worked on him, we had a little collaboration thing where I'm saying, Dale, talk about mustard. And he would kind of roll his eyes, guffaw or whatever, and then have an incredible story. Like he would get there, you know?
Yep.
But it's like sounds so stupid. And then I was like, maybe that's a good question. But if you guys say no, I have another question.
No, that's good.
Great. Yeah,
that's already good.
All right. So tell me about mustard. Give me a story about mustard.
Well, as a child, thank you so much for the question. I didn't like mustard. It's not necessarily a child-friendly flavor. It's a little bit, it's pungent. And I disliked mustard so much that I would tell people that I was allergic to it to make sure that it was never on any of my food.
What a pasta with butter kid thing to do, just to make up an allergy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was like 12 when I stopped ordering a hamburger with ketchup only. So, but yeah, then it became a problem where like I was at somebody's house and there was mustard like in the whatever, like on the chicken or something. And I had said this, and then the kid's like, "No, Mom, Jake's allergic to mustard," and she started freaking out that she was gonna kill me. I was like, "No, I'm just hey, come on, I'm just playing around."
It was a child's lie that I told.
I'm kidding. I live in the computer.
Yep.
I'm just kidding.
Yep.
This is all mustard, like spicy Goldens, like honey mustard, yellow
I didn't
mustard,
like any of that
French.
stuff, but now I've mellowed out and I can accept mustard. It's still not like I need it in context and in a small amount. Meanwhile, my girlfriend, when we're at the movie theater, sometimes she will take a packet of mustard. She's going to be so mad at me for revealing this. Sometimes she'll take a free packet of mustard from the concession counter and just like do a little Go-Gurt with that.
Why?
No.
Yeah.
Look, happily, I'm here for Amanda because I've talked about mustard on the show very briefly before when we talked about hot dogs once. I'm a mustard sicko.
Ian's a sicko. Ian's
what
like
have I wrought?
Yeah,
a food
exactly.
sicko generally.
Yeah, I'll eat it. I mean, it's like a 1-to-1 ratio of like hot dog volume to mustard volume if I'm eating this. I mean, now there's soy hot dogs almost. But I remember.
That's how in Mexico, that means I'm hot dogs.
That's right. Yes, that's correct. I love the stuff. I've always loved the stuff. As a child, I remember reading about people in the Middle Ages or maybe the early Renaissance eating just a bit of roast beef with mustard, and that was like, history is real and I'm a part of it. I suddenly understood
You made it there.
Exactly.
Kind of what this movie is about.
Yeah.
In a way.
So this is exactly right. I think the other types of mustard are fine, but I am, again, in keeping with this child's taste, I think yellow mustard, which is basically just vinegar and salt with a slight hint of something else, is like a perfect condiment.
I remember feeling kind of vindicated, and this is sort of relevant to your work, Miss Me Yet, Chris, but I remember feeling vindicated when I was learning about the dastardly Saddam Hussein and how he used mustard gas. And I thought, exactly, that's why you shouldn't eat it.
Wow.
Well, it's crazy now that you're in a serious relationship with somebody who just like takes a shot of mustard.
Yep.
Oh, she's a mustard fiend. I'm alone in my family in the mustard disrespect. I think everyone else liked it, so I don't know where it came from. It's aggressive, you know.
Yeah, it's not subtle.
Honestly,
it's not subtle.
No.
Given my allergy problems, I probably should have invested in mustard sooner because it's got kind of a clearing.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Didn't have a
Quality.
clue what you were talking about.
yeah.
Don't you think?
Should have
I had-
invested in mustard earlier.
Yeah, some defensive properties or something that you would build
Probably.
Just like
That's a good-
kombucha or something. What is this?
What? Mustard kombucha. You guys ever mess around with I think it was pre-COVID. It was in the before time. You know, people say that. It's so funny when they say that. French's Mustard did a thing where they sent mustard ice cream to different ice cream stores, and it was free if you would be willing to try the mustard ice cream. Did you guys ever?
Nope.
I never
didn't see
heard of
this?
that.
I don't know about this.
Okay. I was like, I think a trick to get people to buy other ice cream because you go to get the bad ice cream and you're like, well, I'm here.
Mhm.
All right. That was one of the best questions I've ever asked on the show. Chris, what about you? Where are you thinking about mustard right now?
Well, tell us about mustard.
Oh, yeah.
Is the command, I believe, of the day.
Yeah, I like mustard, and the only story I can really pull is just how stupid I was as a kid. Like I made my grandma make me. I think I called it like roll-ups. Like, oh, can you make me roll-ups? So she would take bologna.
Mm-hmm.
This is already like so. It's like gagging. Bologna and just like a strip of mustard, and would roll it up, and that was like my lunch.
Not disgusting at all. This is like one of the
For
great
me.
pleasures of childhood. It's like a weird little
Yes.
food
2
ingredients.
ingredients. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I like mustard, and I went back and forth between. I think the house was Golden's, and then I was like, I remember getting yellow mustard if we would go out or whatever. And I was like, let's try that, guys. Like, why don't we do that? So we
Push
had
our
like, a little
horizons.
bit-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the well mustard at home was Golden's. Yeah.
And then when I grew up, it was like honey mustard. Like, what do we have here? You know? And I honestly never
yeah,
really
that's
looked back.
crazy.
I love honey mustard. Can't believe it. To this
I mean,
day.
I'll whip up
Every day I wake up.
I'll whip up a mustard vinaigrette. That's how much I've changed. That's how much I've grown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a classic.
She's changed you.
Yeah.
She has
She's
changed me in
changed
so
you.
many ways. Thank you for I'm going to call that a prompt. More
Yep.
than a question. It's a
That's
prompt.
good.
Thank you
That's
for
a
the
good way to
prompt.
frame it.
Ian, do you have a question for us this morning?
I do. I would like to know, who was your first boss that made you feel like, which of us is from a different planet? Like what's happening here? How can we struggle to communicate and understand each other so much? How is this possible?
I'm gonna have to think about it. Chris, you got a boss?
Are we talking like strictly employment, or can you say like your parents?
Yeah, I was
Oh
thinking.
yeah, that's a type
daddy
of a
as
boss.
well.
I mean, in Mexican Spanish, people often call their parents the boss. So
Gotcha.
Jefe?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was raised by my grandparents, so I would say my grandpa, like 100%.
Mm.
Just like, what are you talking about? What? And that became more apparent as I got older. Like I remember, like our senior year of college, we had some friend who just disappeared, stopped talking to everybody. And he was supposed to shoot our movies, and he just like ghosted, like wouldn't text, whatever. And I was just like, what's going on? Like, what do we do? You know, it was like kind of heartbreaking end of a friendship. And it really bothered me. And I went to my grandpa, who was like not super forthcoming emotionally, but I was like, look, I'm an adult. Let me speak to him as an adult. Let me see why
Sure.
is.
Look for some solace, some guidance.
Yeah. So it's like, what do you think about this? Because he's lived a long time or whatever. So I explained it to him, and I was like, yeah, me and my friend had this other friend, and he just stopped talking to us. We don't know where he is. Like, sometimes he won't come to class, and like you see him every so often, but like you can't get to him because like my friend had lived with him, so he would pop in, not really say anything, pop out. And I was like, what do you think's going on? And he's like, maybe your other friend offed him and like won't, like he could have done that. And like that, and I was like, I feel okay. This is, I tried,
Right.
I
This is
really
not
tried.
a good use of time.
Yeah. And then just like getting in trouble for stuff where I was just like, I'm a kid, I'm a teen, and I'm not that bad, that kind of thing.
Right,
but that is
right.
probably the funniest story of being like, let me try to relate to you on an emotional level. And it's like, oh, you are you were born in, different decade, long
Sphere.
ago.
Yeah.
Truman was president.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
Hey, once in future, if you ask me, he's coming back big time.
This is appropriate for our film today, given Kafka's relationship with his own father, which I think was similarly like, I wish we could understand each other, but
right.
I think he has a story where like he asked for water too much, and his father just like put him outside in the Czech winter for like a couple hours, and he was like,
what Shine Bomb's gonna do to you, bud?
It's true. I am asking for water a lot. Right?
Yeah.
Jake?
My first boss was actually real good. Probably the best boss I ever had. My first like actual boss. One of those people who like reads books and goes to like seminars about how to manage
cool.
but it actually helped. Like it helped. This was just a person who was like,
Invested
each of you is an individual who's here for whatever reason, and like I'm gonna be a human being too. So he gets a pass. But my first job was like an internship in college, and it made me meet the CEO, because I think they were like, the CEO needs to be closer to the people.
He's doing kind of a dirty jobs thing, this guy.
Exactly. And I'm chatting with this guy, and I'm like 18. Like, what the fuck am I gonna talk to some like guy who looks up to Bob Iger? And he's like, let me show you something that's very important to me. And he has a picture. It's a black and white photo that's framed like huge, like $300 photo print, I assume, of this guy's son with Bono. And it's like, this is so important to me. U2 has always been huge for me.
Wow.
And we got the opportunity to be like in front row to see U2, and I asked Bono to take my son up on stage, and they like sang whatever. The fuck, man? This is your prized possession? Guy who's like, just like first of all, just being enthused about, I mean, Scott Aukerman, forgive me, but being enthused about U2 is already just so alien to me.
Also, the boss thing of treating you like a cardboard cutout of a person, like you could have been anybody, right? This has nothing to do with you.
He didn't have anything to say to me.
Yeah,
he was like, "What do you guys? I don't think he knew my name." And then I saw him on a plane once, and I was like, I decided to be like a little networker, a little young professional. And I said, I introduced myself, and he's like, "Oh yeah." and then turned her away. So that's pretty cool.
Wow.
Wait, you said on an airplane?
Yeah, this was a job I was interning at a tech company. And so this was an LA to San Francisco like commuter flight where you will see any of a number of tech type people.
And I'm imagining he just turned away for the full like 50 minutes of the flight, just like went Blair Witch to the wall to avoid talking to you for the remainder of the time.
I don't think he was. I think he sort of vanished me in his mind as soon as he turned away. I don't think he thought about me again.
He no longer existed. Yeah.
Blackberrying the whole way up the state.
Yep.
Yeah. Ian, what about you?
Well, this is a little bit unfair. So it's not my very first boss. My very first boss would have been some type of a Christian leader of some sort. But I worked as the personal assistant to a film professor from Arizona whose husband was at Stanford. So she was like there for the summer.
I think I've heard about this.
Okay. She definitely was just dealing with some mental health stuff. That's not something I'm accusing her of or condescending to her about. But I was 17 and she just had some strange practices, man. Like at the stroke of 5, she would take out a beer and she would split it with me, which is a weird thing to do with your child employee. Mm-hmm. And she would have me edit her manuscripts or whatever about Olivier Sias, or I think she wrote about Lady Gaga sometimes. So this is perfect for us. And then she would ask my opinion of these things that there's just no way that I could have had an opinion about them. The idea that I would be able to say like, what do you think Irma Vep is saying about modern French society or something? I don't know. I think she looked at me and I don't know what she saw. It's impossible for me to guess. And she gave me a lot of checks that bounced, and I would have to ask for another check.
Oh, man.
That was difficult as well.
That happens in the film when they fall out windows and stuff. The checks bounce. Hey, come on.
I gotta stop saying the word check in any capacity for the rest of this podcast.
You gotta be careful about that.
Yep.
Had you seen Irma Vep?
No, I had not.
Okay. So she's like, I mean, I could see maybe being like, hey, you're a young person.
Sure.
Yeah.
Give me a fresh perspective. No,
Does this make any sense? Does this make any sense what I've written here?
Right.
No.
No.
Just like, yeah, the total like myopia of the academic is always a fun thing to run into, where they think you have also read all of the books that they've read.
Yeah.
That no one has read.
As a child, and if she wanted me to do something a certain way, instead of just telling me, she would say like, email my assistant from like 3 assistants ago about how to do this. And I can only imagine this person saying like, I'm haunted by this for the rest of my life. Why I've made a terrible mistake.
For me, it's Boss Nass.
Oh, from Phantom Menace, yeah. He literally is from a different planet.
He is, yeah.
Well, I guess from some people. Some people he's from the same planet.
Yep.
Brian Blessed he would fit into this cast. He's not in it,
sure.
The voice of Boss Nass.
Mm.
And that's a great transition for us to talk about the film Kafka. Now, this is Steven Soderbergh's follow-up to his, his Titanic debut, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. This guy comes out of nowhere who's this gangly 20-something, makes this movie, lights the world on fire, mints 4 stars. Well, I guess Jimmy Spader already kind of hot at that moment.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
He's... Well, no, you know what? Soderbergh's the 4th star. Got it.
Okay.
Back in the pocket.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure. How's this guy going to follow it up?
He has his like pick of anything. We talked about last time. He's already talking to Sidney Pollack. He's already talking to Robert Redford.
Yeah.
He is obsessed with this thing, The Last Ship, that he tries and he can't make it work. He feels like he can't crack The Last Ship, which is even funnier to me. Like the story that doesn't need to be cracked. It's
I mean, it sounds like it would be hard to figure out because they ended up turning it into a TNT show.
They did, yes.
Which sounds like
30 years later.
That's not a movie.
No.
So maybe it needed that room to breathe.
Maybe.
Eric Dane wasn't old enough to play a ship captain yet, so he hadn't cracked it.
But he puts all of these things. He says none of this is important enough for me. There's something else, a script that I've loved for a long time, since before I made Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Well, we should all be so lucky as to know a guy named Lemuel.
It's true,
and that's what happened. His name is actually Anton Lemuel.
Oh,
but there's a script by a guy named Lem Dobbs.
Yep.
British American screenwriter who he'd written this script called Kafka, that's about the idea of Kafka.
Yeah, it's about something. It's about something related to Kafka.
Yeah, it's about some people's interpretation of Kafka.
Yeah.
Chris, what's your sort of in with Soderbergh and with this movie specifically?
I would say growing up, like high school, I watched Ocean's 11 and I enjoyed it. And that might be it until I hit until I hit film school and watched Traffic, and then a bunch of my peers were like, you got to see Schizopolis, that's the one. And that's when I really got it, and I saw him for who he was and learned more about him. And he was always a very fascinating, kind of big time filmmaker, auteur that I still really, really respect today. And I would say, I can't remember if I was just out of school or maybe it was a summer in between years. I did love Kafka. I was reading Kafka in high school, a little bit in college, and learned that Soderbergh also had this movie. And I downloaded it, and I did know that he didn't really like it.
Yeah. So
then I watched it, and I was like, this is awesome. This is incredible. Like, what are you talking about? And we've gotten this far that I learned more about him. I learned how much he didn't like it. I learned that he wanted to recut it. I learned that he did recut it in a way that I didn't expect he would. And I haven't seen that. But then you guys are like, what's your favorite Soderbergh? And I was like, it was Kafka, but I haven't watched it for, like 10, 15 years or something. And I do like it. I do like it. I can't say it's in even my top 5 Soderbergh.
I was preparing to put you in sort of a Kafka-style prosecution about how this could be your number one favorite Soderbergh.
No.
Okay.
It's not.
I think as a sentimental favorite, that's the most understandable place for it to be.
Yeah,
What's interesting,
he's too hard on it, I would say.
Sure. Yeah,
What's
that's probably
also
true.
I mean, it's the work of like a 27-year-old or something. Like pretty good for 27.
For sure.
Obviously. It's interesting, Chris, that this was the one that jumped out because in your own filmmaking work, I feel like you and Soderbergh often you've got a lot of overlaps in terms of zags or sort of category breakdown, like working with non-professional actors, jumping from film to series to shorts and doing your own editing. And so, it's funny we're not talking about Bubble or whatever, but is this on the rewatch? Did you pick up any like, I didn't realize I've been unconsciously digesting the movie Kafka the whole time?
Not really. We talked a little bit before we recorded about just Kafka in general, and you're like, I see the similarities. It's like Kafka himself, that work was very formative to me, so I would have to say it's Kafka's fault and less Soderbergh's Kafka. But again, I mean, I chose this movie because it was one of my favorites that I remembered, and I knew nobody would really say that. Nobody would choose that, and it's like, what? Let me do this one. Let me do this one instead of, like, I think I was bad. I don't know if I batted around Bubble, but I batted around Schizopolis. I batted around like Ocean's 12. Somebody's going to want to do Ocean's 12. I'll let them have it. My thing would be to do kind of the one nobody wants. Let's see if something interesting will come out of it. But
this is a kindness you've done us. I appreciate it.
You know what, though? This one and Underneath, he really doesn't like. And I saw the Underneath for the first time a few months ago. And also, I can't tell you what happened in that movie. It was very hard for me to follow. But sick aesthetically. Like very handsome, very formal, very almost shorthand, De Palma-ish. You know what I mean? I'm not... I can't really go there right now. But I rewatching Kafka, it's like, this is very much, especially compared to Sex Lies, very formal. Like, I'm doing it, I'm proving myself. This is how films are made,
for sure.
And I could see why he wouldn't want to do that. And then future films, he doesn't do that. But I still love this kind of thing, so I get in that headspace of being like, no, I can do this. I can make it look good, and I can make it feel very structured and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we've been talking about like how many bites at the apple Soderbergh gets after Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and he has like most of the 90s is just kind of swing and miss after swing and miss. But like it feels like he's sort of assembling all of the pieces. He's figuring stuff out in a way that most filmmakers don't get the opportunity to, especially at this level, where like Universal Studios is like, you know what? That's fine. Go do your thing and come back to do The Last Ship whenever you're ready, little Steve. Like that's a very rare position to be in.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see how like finished Soderbergh starts to emerge across these movies that nobody's that crazy about, Steven Soderbergh included.
I think you're right, Chris. It's first of all, I had watched like Winston, which is the short he made right before Sex Lies, and in that he's very much doing the sort of film school kid thing of like try every shot type, try to push the boundaries in terms of editing choices, like make it quick, push people tonally. And then Sex Lies is obviously kind of restrained. I mean, it makes a lot of wonderful formal choices that we talked about in the last episode. But I think being able to do this felt to me like somebody who is saying, I love film history. I love, like Fritz Lang or like expressionistic stuff. I'm going to try to make a movie that has that stuff in it. I also think that it's not exactly an expressionistic film in some ways. I think I would prefer it if it were more of that. I think he does some tonal remixing that makes it a little bit inconsistent that we can talk about. But in some ways, I admire that also because, like you're saying, Jake, it feels like him saying, okay, can I steal from these people? Can I do it myself? And can I add some piece of me into it? And I don't know that if he like totally finds how to make those things work together, but I think it's cool that he is going back to his roots of like somebody who cares about the way film has been made and is also trying to push something about the way he thinks film can be made in the future and just add his little touch to it. So
let's talk about it. Let's into it.
Yeah.
So the movie is about, did I call him Joseph Kafka at some point?
Yeah. You want to just say Franz Kafka?
No. And I had already, even like Kimmy had made the joke about Franz Kafka.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm going to leave it in as sort of...
I mean, I assumed you were thinking of Joseph K., which is a famous
I must
Kafka
have been.
character.
Joseph K., maybe it's for Kafka.
I think that's what a lot of
maybe
people
he's
believe.
revealing. Maybe he's messing around. Sometimes you're like, you go to summer camp and you're like, what if my name's like Chance here or whatever?
Right.
They never did that.
Do you know why he did that? The K?
I think a lot of people do believe that it's this sort of like shadowy reference to himself, and also because it gives
his name is Joseph.
Right, that's right. And also because gives this sense of like not a complete person that you don't understand. It's like, who they, I mean, because he goes from Joseph K in the trial, and then in the castle, the character is just named K for the entire thing, just like K, period.
Yeah, there was somewhere, maybe in one of the intros to one of the books, but it said that it was I. And then he crossed it out.
That's right. Yeah, that's
for
Castle. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we've talked about this name before. It's come up on the show because Julian K., the American Gigolo, was named by Paul Schrader after Joseph K. from the trial. So a little bit of connection there. And also, we've, on our introduction episode to Soderbergh, this is not his first film about Prague, because of course he did a Yes concert film. Hey, come on. So this is a movie that's shot in black and white in Prague. Was it the Czech Republic at the time? Was it Czechoslovakia? We're in 1990. Where are we?
That's the fascinating. This is like post Velvet Revolution, which is 1989, pre-division of Czechoslovakia, which is 92, I think.
Right,
so this is like in the midst of the restructuring. Yeah.
And stars Jeremy Irons as Kafka, Teresa Russell, Joel Grey, Ian Holm. Is it Jerome Krebe? Who we'll visit him. We'll figure this out before the King of the Hill episode. I promise you I'll find out how to say the guy's name. Armin Mueller-Stahl, Alec Guinness.
Yeah. Shockingly
in this film. As well as for 6 months, the vice president of Romania is in this film.
That's correct. Yeah.
Ian Karamitru, Simon McBurney. You got all kinds of folks. And then David Jensen, from Winston, as the Laughing Man. Just one of Soderbergh's LSU buddies.
Yep.
He brings along some of the folks from Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Got Larry Blake. We got Cliff Martinez.
We got Walt Lloyd. Is that the guy's name?
Walt Lloyd. Yeah, Walt Lloyd.
Incredibly shot film. This the movie. All of any issues I have with the film are not with its visuals or its
totally
score.
agree.
Oddly, one of the things that Soderbergh doesn't like about it is the mix of accents.
Yeah,
which
that's
they're not speaking German, so I don't care. You know.
And in one of the ways this film, I think, stumbles for me, I also, similar to you, Chris, was a big high school Kafka fan. And it was like, early piece of literature that felt like, okay, I get what literature can do and not just historical literature, right? Like a literature that is pretty present, speaking to its moment. But having people speak of mix of accents, that would be fine, I think, Kafka-wise. I think some of his other choices to be much less subtle about stuff, I would probably rethink some of those. But
well, and also like the Austro-Hungarian Empire, you got to imagine that people in Prague, I mean, even just reading about Kafka, trying to figure out
when he's writing in German and when he's writing in Czech and stuff.
In Czech, and like he spoke German with a Czech accent, or maybe he spoke Czech with a German accent, and then also like he got really into the Yiddish theater.
He did, yeah. And
like his parents spoke Yiddish, but then he was taught like sort of state German at school. So, I think that's fine.
And I think just in terms of production, Teresa Russell comes in as a replacement because Anne Pardio is like from La Femme Nikita. She apparently shoots one scene, and then the claim is that the language barrier is too high, and she just like leaves the set, just like walks away, and never comes back.
Is
and just,
crazy.
Yeah, very crazy.
By the way, how's your slash fiction about Khrushchev coming along?
It's coming around really great. Yeah, thanks for checking it.
Have you guys kissed yet in the story?
We kissed page 1, but then we dialed it back for a long time, which is one of my big choices. Yeah,
that kind of sitcom thing where like they won't they get it out of the way, but then things are going to come back. Yep. I like that. So I don't know, how should we get into this? Should we try to do a plot summary?
Yeah, I mean, let's give it a shot. First we can say Lem Dobbs wrote the script. I read the screenplay. It's pretty similar to this. What's weird is that then he doesn't like this film either, and he complains that he wanted to shoot like a straight biography, and Soderbergh came and turned it into like a mystery thriller.
Like a thriller. Yeah.
That's, at least based on the draft that I read, that's not a good characterization of the original film. It's also like a weird mystery thing, just with fewer dramatic elements, I think. So.
Is there another film of this type that's sort of imagining like the life experiences that would have led to someone's famous work? Yeah, I mean, there's that famous Blacklist script that's never been made about Jim Henson, where like the Muppets are in it. Speaking of Muppets, there's like it's got a lot of puppet stuff in it, and then there's also the really awful photoshopped poster that goes around where
Ryan
the Ryan Gosling did you whoa Chris knows what I'm talking about. Ryan Gosling dressed as like a young Walt Disney looking at a mouse on a train.
Yeah, I posted that last year as a joke, being like, I can't wait. It didn't take. It didn't take. But yes,
like
I'll never forget
2012.
that. That would go over, like, that would be once a year posted, and being like, this is going to be epic. Like, this is gonna
really good.
I gotta learn what this guy from Missouri thought when he first met like a Mexican guy in Burbank. This is gonna be incredible. But is there? I can't really think of another. It's like its own weird thing.
Actually, yeah, it is.
The idea is that this is sort of imagining the circumstances that might have inspired Kafka's greatest works, and so it is a movie in which a guy named Kafka experiences some of the stuff that is in mostly the trial and the castle.
Mm-hmm.
But also, he mentions like, I'm writing a bug guy story, and
he's
everyone
already
is like,
published in the penal colony and stuff. Yeah.
A bug guy. I do like that they make fun of him because he was one of those guys nobody cared about during his lifetime, like us.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so the movie starts with some beautiful black and white shots of Prague and very like silent film-esque opening titles that feel like it's sort of like a ghost is writing on the screen. I do like that. Some great Cliff Martinez music. And then there's a man strangled in an alley by like a maniacally laughing, fucked up face guy.
And here's where I'm going to become like a pedantic, too attached to Kafka subjective interpreter. From
the
probably
beginning, the first
here,
sentence is where
that's what I mean. From here,
okay.
basically through the end of the film. And I like a lot of aspects of it, but I think that Kafka is very difficult to adapt to the screen. I like Orson Welles' The Trial pretty well. I think basically anybody who adapts Kafka is deciding which aspects they want to adapt and then going really broad on everything else. And I think that's not like a failure. That's more like a difficulty of the medium, which is funny because I think Lem Dobbs on the Limey audio commentary that he does with Soderbergh talks about how he's like, actually, novels are very adaptable to the screen and you can just show people thinking and stuff. I think that
for me, it's easy.
Yeah, I think having a crazy guy with like leprosy come out of the shadows and just be so spooky and weird, that's not really like Kafka to me. And that's fine. From here on, I was like, this is just a different type of movie. This is like, people talk about Brazil being like Kafka. Brazil is like a goofy satire. Kafka is very funny, but when people do crazy stuff, it's not like, look at this like wild, bizarre guy that's in the story.
Brazil's always struck me as like being somewhat similar to maybe DeLillo or Pynchon in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is more like you guys talked about the German expressionist stuff, but even there's a character named Murnau. And it's like, okay.
And Orlac,
Yeah, obviously people are going to be like thinking of Kafka when they see this. You can't get away from that. But it is like a heavy combo of that. I want to try to do that kind of thing. And that's where the opening comes in, which is like, Kafka wouldn't do. Yeah,
I mean, it's just like straight horror in some way.
Yeah.
Horror or like absurdists, bizarre stuff. And I think it's good in its own way. But I think from here on out, it's just sort of like, okay, we're doing something else.
And he's like, he's talking about the, it reminded me of kind of like Led Zeppelin said they were like a blues band. They're not, like it's fine that that's what you think you're doing, but like what's coming out of it is something else.
Right.
And it's sort of like, he says he's doing Kafka and German Expressionism, and then there's a lot of third man in this, which is later.
There's a lot of third man. There's a lot of like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Just like wacky guys doing wacky stuff.
Wacky guys. Okay. So then he finds a photograph of, is that Ian Holm? And hands it to a cool, like the world's most British looking guy. He's got like a bowler hat on.
Yeah.
And so then we meet Kafka, played by Jeremy Irons, looking very handsome. Jeremy Irons in interviews said that he had never read Kafka and he's not very well read, which he just is like that, I guess.
But he wanted to do this because he was like obsessed with Sex, Lies, and Videotape and said, I got to work with this kid.
Yeah, which is funny. So he works at an insurance place. He's a claims writer and notices that his desk mate is missing. He has some run-ins with Burgle, the office manager. Burgle is is a character, I think, in The Castle. A lot of the names come from The Castle in the Trial. Burgle is played by Joel Grey, which to me immediately recalls Cabaret and we're in Caligari to Hitler territory here, folks. So he's like a sniveling middle manager prick. There's another worker named Gabriella, played by Teresa Russell, who Kafka kind of quietly resists the shitty insults from Burgle, and then Gabriella just tells him to fuck off, basically. She storms out. Kafka is like, hey, have you seen our friend Raban? That's the guy who got killed. And she sort of blows him off. He goes to look for Raban at his rooms. This is the time of the world where people would rent rooms.
I love to read Kafka or Dostoevsky. To have somebody in a boarding house. Wonderful.
Yeah, I took up some rooms, and it's always like $18 a month or something. Right. Yeah, and so he's looking for his buddy. Nobody's seen him. Gabriella's sitting with some weirdos who would turn out to be anarchists. One of them was the vice president of Romania. And it seems like Raban was involved with some kind of political stuff. He runs into this guy named Bizzlebeck, and this is real Rosencrantz Guildenstern kind of like this is just a character out of a different movie, basically, and he's like a sculptor who also works as like is he like a grave digger? What's his?
Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah, and this is Jerome Krebe, who is was he Belgian or some shit like that, some crazy shit.
And here's the thing, I like this character. This is what I felt throughout the movie. Of like, oh, I like this type of movie also. I like Burgle feels like he's like from Joe versus the Volcano or something, and I like Joe
which
versus
is
the
also
Volcano.
kind of Joe versus the Volcano is sort of lightly Brazil at the beginning. Yeah, he's Dutch, which is half the people in Belgium are excited that I thought he was Belgian, and the other half are so mad. But you know, he's Kafka's sort of like opening up to the wider world here. This is a guy who just goes home from work and writes his little stories that he mostly doesn't want anyone to read. He's buttoned up. He's a Jeremy Irons type guy. But Bisselbeck is a fan of his, and at this point, Kafka gets dragged to the morgue by some cop guys. This is getting into the trial territory. And there's Raban's body. And he meets Armin Mueller-Stahl as Grubach, the inspector.
Love this actor. Wonderful to see him anytime. And for me, this is where suddenly Whiplash style, we are doing a bit of Kafka, because the weirdness comes from like Kafka feeling so uncomfortable that he's like explaining things in a way that becomes like increasingly unnatural. He's saying like, well, he hasn't been seen by his landlady. There's like a very prolonged pause and he says, well, not for a day or two in any case. Just kind of like these like weird things that sort of distort normal language and make you realize that, okay, there's like this space, this social anxiety, the gulf of language that can't be crossed. So I don't know. This is when I was like, oh, so they do care about some of this stuff, and that's cool. And they can turn some of it into successful dialogue.
Yeah, it's like it's always. I think my main takeaway from the movie is that it's like feels like it doesn't know what it wants to do.
Yeah, this is kind of like when he's talking to the guy. He's like, "Oh, were you guys friends?" He's like, "No, yes, no, yes." And the guy, and it's kind of like who's on first. Like they're doing a little routine, and it does sort of work, but then they don't really do that for a long time. So it's very
exactly.
The humor in this is very strange. Like
it is.
It's like there's the goofy slapstick assistants.
And I always love the assistants.
Yeah, I always love when those guys show up. But yeah, otherwise it's very uneven. It's like the comedy, and then there's like a low-key mystery which never feels like it's always kind of simmering. You know?
And there's the scary guy who we don't know what the scary guy's deal is, how he connects to all this. Speaking of the assistants, so Grubach is like, at first he seems very threatening, but then it's almost like he is kind of on Kafka's side and has to like pretend to be.
That's good Kafka
that's
shit.
Good Kafka.
Like what is the relationship here? These inspectors who are like the face of bureaucracy are kind of nice sometimes, or like very human. Yeah,
they're just doing their job. Some of them, and then some of them are monsters.
Right.
And so then he gets his boss, played by Alec Guinness, who I learned was still alive in 1990. He was still like 2006 or something.
Doesn't look that much older than 1977.
No. Why'd you pick that year? So he met Boss Nass. I remember when after the Phantom Menace came out, my dad, maybe it was my mom, one of my parents casually saying, if someone could invent that thing that they put in their mouth to breathe underwater, be the richest person in the world.
I basically said the same thing, and I was 7 years old. So
yeah, my parents were also 7. So his boss, Alec Guinness, calls him into his office, and this happens to me all the time, actually, in my work situation, where you get called in and your work performance is criticized, and you're told that you need to like go outside and run around. And you're like, am I getting fired? And then you get a promotion. And so he gets a promotion that was meant for Raban, which comes with 2 assistants who are my favorite part of the movie. I've come to the realization. So these guys are played by Keith Allen and Simon McBurney. I'm a McBurney bro.
Always a delight to see this dude as well.
He's great in the Mission Impossible movies. He was recently in Nosferatu.
Oh yeah, that's right. Of course,
as the Renfield stand-in. He's in like Jonathan Demme's Manchurian Candidate. He's in the Ridley Scott Robin Hood. which is not very good, but he's in it. He's in Body of Lies, another Ridley Scott movie. Great guy. Love this guy. Put him in everything. So, and they're cartoon characters, these guys. They're like little imps. And I do think that the scene where they're feeding the same piece of paper through two typewriter carriages like that are facing each other, that's a potent image. And I think it gets at what is at least called the Kafka-esque, even if it's not.
Yeah, see, I agree. I liked that a lot, and I like these guys. But this is where I would just say, embrace this as the vibe of your film, because I disagree about that being the actual like spirit of Kafka, because he wasn't really doing like goofy cartoon images. That wasn't really his vibe. He was sort of like using obvious symbols and then deconstructing them so much that you sort of like start to lose track of like what's real and what's not real. But I think this is great. I found myself saying, I wish the film would just commit to this if this is what they want to do.
Then it takes another turn where now he meets up with Gabriella, who says she and Edward were having an affair, and she wants him to help her figure out what happened to him. And then he goes and meets with her and her friends, who turn out to be anarchists, or they're sort of a vague revolutionary cause. It's not really in Soderbergh's interest to get into the nitty gritty of their ideological positioning. Ian, what did you feel about these guys?
This was slightly frustrating for me. I think we try to steer clear of like straight political readings of like when a character is political in a movie. What does that say about the filmmaker or something? But obviously we end up feeling sympathetic towards these people as the film goes on. But they're like also cartoon anarchists who Kafka confronts them with liberal rationalism and says like, well, why don't instead of thinking about theories or instead of thinking about like movements, why don't we think about facts? And I don't write for hire. I don't write for somebody else. I write for myself. He's sort of like this noble individual,
pure artist.
Yeah, who doesn't want to get caught.
He writes for the fireplace,
right? Yeah, and I mean, Kafka, his writing was not explicitly political, but he did like wear socialist pins to school and stuff. He like got in fights. Although he kind of had a weird turn towards Zionism at the end of his life, he like got in a fight with a Zionist friend in school because he was too interested in some type of egalitarianism and he didn't want to be involved in this type of project.
I think also his late in life turn towards Zionism may have been because of a babe.
Yeah, it seems like it was kind of, yeah.
It was from what's her name here? Dora Diamant, I think. And then she had his last writings and then the Gestapo took him.
Mm-hmm. So. Yep.
And that's what never mind. Anyway, so next, so he meets with them and they're like, they tell him about the castle, which we're sort of now learning the castle is involved in. There's a castle and there's spooky doings at the castle. And the insurance firm might be involved. Edward was supposed to take a briefcase bomb to the castle. It never went off. They think that this is the reason for his death. And then she disappears. There's also this interlude where the laughing man finds and kills somebody like sleeping in a park, which I was trying to figure out if that guy was supposed to be. In a movie in black and white, you cannot show someone's head sideways. I cannot figure out who they are when it's sideways and black and white. I don't know if this happens to either of you guys.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that it happens to you. It's funny.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for you, man. This is the guy who comes back later as like the next assassin, the next mind-controlled Manchurian candidate assassin.
Okay, but then he's got like scars and stuff on him or whatever. So like, I can't tell. You can't. You gotta. It's gotta be somebody I recognize. Gotta wear
the same outfit.
Yeah, or just make it like Brad Pitt. So I know. I see. This guy's face is already in here. Yeah. So anyway, Kafka wants to figure out what's going on. There's apparently a lot of accidental deaths at this factory. There's a missing photo of a guy named Dr. Murnau in the death record, and he gets chased around by some guys. Anyway, Bizelbeck hits the assistants over the head with his backpack when they're trying to take Kafka to the castle. and then Biselbeck lets him into the castle. Do they go through the cemetery, or does everything kind of look like a cemetery?
No, they go through a grave. Yeah,
like a Jewish grave specifically. Yeah.
We did skip very briefly the murder of all of the anarchists, which I think is like the type of thing that, even though they say corny stuff, like they're authorities, that's reason enough to doubt them, and they kind of look foolish. I think ultimately we are supposed to feel, oh, they were crushed under this machine, and maybe Kafka has to wake up a little bit to the forces that he's up against or something.
Yeah. I wanted to, one of you, it was Ian, said that Soderbergh put himself into this. It's like a little personal. I'm not really sure where you guys are going with that. And I also don't know if you've read the Soderbergh book that's partly interviews with...
Oh, yeah, Getting Away with It?
Yeah.
With Richard Lester.
Yeah.
I have not read it yet.
Okay, it's really great. I've read it twice. And little side note, Soderbergh, if you're listening to this, I would love to do a sequel to that book, and I get to interview you. And it would also be nice. I've also been checking your watch list, and I'm waiting for Miss Mia to be on that. So just so you know now.
So you are on notice.
Yes, we could do either one of those. Make that happen for me. Anyway, so he's made Che, and I kind of feel like in that book, I was getting some inklings that he was some sort of left, and whatever that means, I don't really know, and I haven't read it in a few years, but there's a lot of evidence that he is some sort of left, like left to the Democratic Party. And I'm watching this thing, and it's like, oh, there's anarchists, and they're against what? The castle, and that's very like, we're not going to, it's so vague. And anytime you want to get vague, no offense to any anarchists, but you're the stand-in. When somebody wants to be political, they put in anarchists. It's like, whatever. But I did have these things, again, because he's done Che's and a few things. And then I've read some interviews where he's kind of said certain things that I would say would be to the left of whatever the mainstream is. And I was wondering in this, does he see himself as this character, and he's getting involved with politics, and he's like, no, I got to write. Like, that's what I do. You guys don't, and you guys are ridiculous. But he's being drawn into this, and I wonder how much of that is Soderbergh, how he feels about himself, where he's like, no, I'm an artist, I'm writing, I'm doing these things. And they're like, no, there's stuff that we could be doing stuff about, and we're not being ridiculous. It's true. And he also believes that, but he's trying to be the artist. That's kind of what I read into this.
I want to save a little piece for the speech that he gives to Ian Holmes' character at the end, because I think that's like a little bit maybe of the thesis to me of what he believes about some of this stuff. But I think that my understanding of Soderbergh's politics secondhand seems to be like he's left to the Democratic Party, but he doesn't seem to necessarily go in for like specific mass movements or like a specific ideology. It seems to be more like, how can we manifest these things, sort of like leftist ideals, just kind of by all participating in them or fighting for them or something. Like, he's not a huge union guy.
No.
He's not big on, I think, these sort of like historical institutions that fight for leftist causes. So I do think that he is, he seems to hold very progressive beliefs. And I think in this film, even if we're speculating about him in the Franz Kafka character, it's like somebody who is sympathetic to these causes, wants freedom, in his art is seeking the type of freedom that we associate with leftist ideology, but is finding a way to do it like himself. Can we all find our way towards this, like as individual actors? And obviously that's going to be a big part of the final speech, talking about like individuals.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
He's also, he's a guy who I think, like this is the first, obviously he's made 2 movies at this point, but this is the first one that this inaugurates like a major Soderbergh theme of like the individual against this big uncaring system.
Yes.
Your Aaron Brockovich, your
Che,
Che, even your Danny Oceans, your Magic Mike, all these guys. But also like he's the guy who went to Bolivia to shoot Che and ended up exporting a Bolivian brandy and putting his own little face on the bottle, which like is, it's not like he's the first guy to do that, but it's,
I mean, we're planning to drink some of it. It's supposed to be quite good. I'm excited about it.
We're going to be drinking Singani 63, no question about it. But that's he's literally like extracting from Bolivia while he makes the Che movie, but then he makes Contagion, which I think is like one of the clearest depictions of the damage of the extractive economy. Like that movie ends with just an absolute masterclass and like here's what capitalism hath wrought. So like that's a bit what's exciting about Soderbergh, I think, to me, and what puts him in the lineage of the other two filmmakers we've talked about, Eastwood and Schrader, is like, where is this guy coming from, and how much of him is in the film. And it's funny that he to ask where he put himself in the movie about the guy who wanted all of his work burned, that Soderbergh now kind of wants burned in its own way.
Right.
And he's asked people to destroy any copies of Sex, Lies, and Videotape that they had before the Criterion edition where he fixed the sound. So like I think the art aspect of it is definitely in there, and his ambivalence about like working with these big Hollywood heavy hitters instead of Redford or Pollock and Universal. He goes with Barry Levinson's Baltimore Pictures. And then this film was produced independently, and they like screened it for distributors. Like
I mean, I think he gets involved in it because he's going around talking about scripts that he likes. He has like 4 favorite screenplays, and he's in a meeting with this guy, Stuart Kornfeld, and he's just like, oh, there's this script that I really like by this guy named Lem Dobbs. And Stuart says, oh, Lem is my friend. Do you want to make this movie? And then that's how they start making the movie.
Lem Dobbs, he did an uncredited rewrite on Romancing the Stone. He was like the onset.
I saw that. Yeah.
The onset screenwriter, and then he's done a number of uncredited rewrite jobs, including on SWAT, the 2003 film SWAT.
Oh, whoa, okay.
And I do wonder, is he the one who wrote the line where the SWAT boss, played by Reggie Cathy, says, SWAT stands for Special Weapons and Tactics. Where were your tactics out there?
It's a classic line. We all know this
David
line.
Ayer?
Yeah.
We'll never know. But
yeah, I mean, he also wrote Dark City, and watching this film,
right?
This
Dark
movie
City
is like very Dark City, and I don't mean this as an insult, but sort of like depth of analysis wise feels closer to Dark City than to a Kafka story.
Yeah,
and I like Dark City a lot.
Ian, you were talking about how Kafka maybe needs to wake up, and I was thinking about the Rage Against the Machine song from the end of The Matrix and Dark City. Yeah. And I think Dark City and The Matrix, Dark City is like the version of The Matrix where it's like a non-collectivist version of The Matrix. Where
right.
Like what we really need is like a morally right God King that'll fix all the problems, rather than like a ragtag bunch of people
who believe in a cause.
Who believe in a cause.
Yeah.
Exactly. Matrix, good movie. Just putting it out there.
Oh, yeah. Come on with that.
Speaking of Matrixy stuff and waking up, he gets to the castle.
Yes.
And this is an interesting thing happens here. Stylistically, the movie is in color. Oh my God.
Oh, shit.
Chris has pulled up his sweatshirt to reveal the Matrix t-shirt.
Wow.
He's going further. Oh, is that a blowback sweatshirt?
And a blowback sweatshirt? Yeah. Come on with this. This is a fit. Yeah.
This guy's, fit check passed.
And if I can blow up your spot, also an IWW hat. So this is like, what a dream outfit here.
This is the armor of God that they talk about in the Bible.
That's right.
It's how I roll in New Jersey, baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're in the castle, and now it's in color. And it turns out that what they're doing in the castle is that they are experimenting on the employees of this Orlac factory, trying to make a more efficient person, specifically more efficient worker. And at one point, then Dr. Murnau turns out to be Ian Holm, who we've talked about from The Sweet Hereafter, and also that's where Ian lives. And
yes.
I made that joke on the Patreon, but now it's free.
It's free, baby.
And he says, he talks about how like they're trying to basically make better workers. They do what they're told. First physiology, then ideology. So we're really getting into
this. Yeah, see, that's the type of stuff I didn't really like. I didn't go for that stuff. I do think that it was a wonderful choice, Kafka style choice, to have Ian Holm be this like sympathetic type of a guy who's sort of saying like, oh, you don't really belong here. I can like try to get you out of here. And then turns out to be the main bad guy. And it's not really like a contradiction exactly.
No, not really. And then they cut a guy's head open. They cut his brain open. They're going to experiment on the guy's brain. They got this crazy microscope that's also a sort of like a telescope where the viewfinder is a giant room-sized glass dome.
Yeah, and this is
very
like
cool
Brazil stuff to me.
Yeah.
This is like a Brazil machine. And I think it contrasts a little bit with, if people have read the Kafka story in the Penal Colony about a crazy machine that like tortures people by like writing their crimes on them.
Mm-hmm.
In that story, the focus is on like there's like a guy who comes to witness it. And he keeps commenting on like how heavy the uniforms of the guys are for like a tropical environment. And that seems like it must be uncomfortable. That's like a Kafka focus point, sort of like ignoring this horror in favor of banal inconveniences or something, or like thinking about somebody else's human experience of this. And I think in the movie, it's like, look at this crazy machine that we made, which is cool, but different.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a chase. I was like scrambling over the big glass thing, which made me really uncomfortable. Very effective filmmaking here. Just and then first they're crawling over a brain, and then it's an eyeball. Reminded me of the cover of the Walter Murch book. That's a picture of an eyeball. That's all I have for you on that. And
this is when Kafka gives his big speech.
Yes. So Ian, tell us about the speech, please.
He's talking to Ian Holmes' character, to Dr. Murnau, and saying, I write about nightmares, you built one. And Murnau is trying to say, like, you and I share something. You're a witness to the modern, again, the movie a little bit stating its themes, but saying like, you are doing something special like I am. I'm a part of the modern. You're like the chronicler of it. And then Kafka, his big rebuttal to him is saying, you're trying to eliminate everything that makes one human being different from another. Like individualism is the thing that you're most afraid of, because Ian Holm actually says like a crowd is easier to control than an individual. A crowd has a common purpose. The purpose of the individual is always in question. So to me, the film is saying we're bigger threats as individuals than we are as part of a collective. And this, just ideologically, obviously, I don't agree, because although mass movements can be co-opted and can be undermined and all these things that are historically true and important to understand, to me, this is the vision of a guy who has power as an individual telling a story, right? Like somebody who says, you know what, in my life, using my individual power, I've been able to succeed quite a bit. And that says that that's available to everybody. And I will just say that if you leave Baton Rouge or Los Angeles, or are not the son of a professor who has quite a convenient life, more or less, you'll find that lots of people do not have any power as individuals. And if you're born like in the Oaxacan countryside, the number of things that you're able to do in your life it's a much shorter list than like whatever you dream of or something.
Right.
Yeah. And I wonder how much like these are the conventions of screenplay storytelling. It's like you got to have the main character, and this is that kind of leads that way. And he's 27, 28?
Yep.
And he's very confused about his success for Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Right.
But it's still that young, that successful. The system works, which I don't think
it makes you think that it works. Yeah.
But I would say with all he does now, and even not too long after, I think he is increasingly convinced that the system does not work, that he is
I think so too.
Part of.
Right.
I think so too. I think he becomes more critical and more aware of the shortcomings as time goes on.
Yeah. And like he's the first, he sort of uses his position as a name, as a guy who major studios have to pay attention to what he does to then kind of legitimize or like reify, making a movie on an iPhone, or distributing it yourself, or, re-editing Raiders of the Lost Ark and posting it on your website. And that's one of your canonical works, you know?
Yeah. He's a weird dude. I mean, I think there's that also that series Control Z, which I guess you're are going to do.
Yeah. In about 15 years, we'll get to it.
Which is like, I remember watching that. It was okay. But the conceit is maybe incrementalism works. That's kind of what I was feeling at first. Yeah. And then by the end, it was like, incrementalism doesn't work. It's like a rich guy telling you these things are going to work so that the rich guy can then have this like little victory at the end, which he clearly didn't need. And I don't think I'm reading too much into that. I kind of feel like that is overtly what it's about, which is just quite interesting for a thing. And that's like a project. It's like, here you go, buy it. You know, that's solely from him self-distributing.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
quite interesting. I don't know. He's probably just a confused person, though, like all
of us.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you're right, Chris. I also think we should be aware, because Sex, Lies, and Videotape is a perfect example of having a character with a not a strong ideological position, because I don't think Graham is like a political ideologue, but he has a specific sense that he's developed of the world that he thinks is kind of radical and more clear-eyed. And then by the end of the film, that is undermines, right? This idea that like being this outsider who thinks he has it all figured out, that may not be the case, even if you bring some legitimate concerns. Like, you know, it's better than being a Peter Gallagher lawyer, but it doesn't mean that you have in one stroke solved all the problems of the world or something. So I think it's good for us to assume that he understands that his characters are not him, and that the characters may come to realizations they may be lacking in realizations. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're basically at the end here. Is there anything else that happens of the plot summary? The bomb goes off, and then there's kind of he escapes. Grubach kind of lets him into the ruse, and like, we're gonna call Gabriella's death a suicide.
And that's like what saves his life, basically, right? Is that he buys in, because he was going to get summoned to the castle, which is tantamount to an execution, and then his summons is canceled. And I think the implication is because he's shown that he can be an accomplice to the city. Exactly. Yeah.
And then he's got a cough, just like the real Joseph Kafka, who
yes, the real Joseph Kafka,
who died of tuberculosis. You know, they say you got a Kafka to get off.
They do say
Kimmy was supposed to say that, not me, actually, because it was too stupid. Sorry.
Yeah, he died, just as a point of interest, he died of starvation caused by tuberculosis.
Yeah,
because
his throat hurt
closed.
so bad he couldn't eat, and they hadn't invented a way to feed you. Yeah,
I think a much more awful thing to imagine even than just normal tuberculosis killing you.
Yeah. You know, Ian had a brain parasite that died of starvation. Fucking dumb shit.
Fozzie mode?
Yeah. So the film Kafka, I mean, you know, there's this article On Location, the road less traveled. After Sex, Lies, and Videotape, Hollywood beckoned. So where is Steven Soderbergh? On the Other Side of the World, by David Gritten from the Los Angeles Times in 1990. And it's just visiting the set of the film and sort of talking about, like, this is what this guy is doing to follow up his big Sundance hit, huh? And it takes some time to explain where the Czech film industry is at this point, and you know, post Velvet Revolution, in this weird moment where like the budget has been slashed for the Czech
Berndorf Studios, which
film ministry,
which both when it was occupied by the Nazis, like Leni Riefenstahl was there, I think, for a while.
Goebbels had an office,
But then also later made Daisies, which I think you and I saw together.
Yes, we did.
This is like the Czech studio, obviously, because it was the main state-sponsored studio. But yeah, the budget slashed 75%. I think they say they're going to fire 90% of employees. Yeah,
they were going Doge over there. They invented Doging.
They did, and the disappointing thing to me is like Václav Havel style. The dude, I think his name is Lux in that article, says something like, you know, of all the people who are getting fired, the ones who are capable are not worried. They're looking forward to the future of like, you know,
classic,
this is exactly like let neoliberalism find the people who deserve to rise to the top.
What's so interesting is the way that Kafka and like the Kafka-esque, which means about as much as calling something Lynchian. Like it's just, you know, it's a signifier in search of a sign, I think. It is in this article pretty clearly being used to like describe the misery of communism.
Yep.
But then plenty of Marxists, scholars, and Marxists generally like Kafka for his depiction of the misery of bureaucracy. I mean, the guy was an insurance agent. That's capitalism for you, buddy, you know?
I mean, he was writing that. One of the reasons I love Kafka still, even though I wouldn't count him amongst my like very favorite authors maybe anymore, but he's writing at the close of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Czech Republic at that time, or like the area of Bohemia, like you're saying, was like 20% of the landmass, or like 10% of the landmass of Austria-Hungary, but it produced like 70% of all industrial goods or exports or something. This was like the industrial heart of this place that had come about like in 50 years. And then at the time he's alive, the empire collapses. Post World War I, it becomes like the Czechoslovak Republic, and it's kind of trying to figure out who it is, right? It has this weird like semi-German identity, like you're saying, that also saw in the 19th century like a Czech identity revival and like a Czech language revival. And he's, Kafka himself is Jewish, and he has a bunch of hang-ups about sex and a bunch of hang-ups about his father. And he is trying to like make sense of what it means to have your personal psychology be a part of the landscape that you see in this way that is like seamless, right? There is no differentiation between your anxieties, your fears about the larger world, and the buildings that you see around you or something, right? When you see the building, you're seeing those things in it. And I think it's terrific, and I think it's strange and worth talking about that this film is coming at the end of communist Czechoslovakia. It's coming at a time when capitalism is supposedly triumphant or resurgent or something. And then, the next decade of the Czech Republic is a strange one where the economy does improve, but also it's like some of the worst cronyism that people, there's a reason that like 20% of the population or 25% of the population says, I wish we could go back to communism, because now it's different people stealing and we don't even have bread lines or something.
Yeah, like, either of you, do you see any of that? I mean, do you think the film is looking backward or looking forward, looking contemporarily? Like, is there any indication in the movie that Soderbergh at all are commenting on America as much as they're commenting on, turn of the century Prague or 1990 Europe?
That's a good question, because I was going to say no. But then I was thinking of Schizopolis and how much of that is like corporate office culture seen in that way. Mm-hmm. And then I was struck by how much that was an analog where, it's the clerk and he's in all these ridiculous situations. And then they kind of do that in Schizopolis when he's working, which always then reminds me of Office Space. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the prism in which they view it. They don't really connect it to the wider systemic things. It's just like that kind of PMC corporate office culture, and that's it. It has no greater part of the system. It's just that. Whereas whenever they talk about a communist country, it's like, well, that's the state. Therefore, they connect that, but they never connect it to any greater systems here. And that's probably what he was doing, I would say.
Yeah, for capitalism, it's a distortion. It's like a deviant version, a mutation from capitalism. But for communism, it is one and the same. It's identical. I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's the view people take.
I would say, too, like, I tend to view nominally communist countries that are around today and still not around with a little bit more of, I don't know, I give them a little bit more because in theory, and I like to believe, it's like they are working towards something. And to whatever degree, I believe what they say when they're doing it. So when there are things that they do that they don't like, that I don't like, that are not good, I think it's fine to critique them. But it's like, well, at least they're doing this thing that I believe in, where I cannot imagine what we say we are doing. What are we doing in this country? Is there a plan? And it's like, there is a plan, but it's not good. And it has nothing to do with what I want out of life and what I think would be better for everyone, and that critique is never, ever broached. Soderbergh aside, it's like very rarely ever a thing that we do, but it's like constantly like, oh yeah, but you gotta conform, and it's in black and white and it's foggy all the time. Like, and that has nothing to do with like countries that are industrializing, countries that are in a state of constant siege. Yeah. All that stuff. America, it's never shown to be if they're shown conformity, it's just a joke, or it's just a Gen X kind of thing, where it's just like, drinking Coca-Cola,
Right.
It's very
Fight Club,
strange.
Little Soaps, yeah.
Yeah. And there's all, again, I like Fight Club, and I like Office Space quite a bit, but it's very different how these critiques in art are done versus like, I'm gonna get the communists again, I'm gonna really go for the heart there. Whereas it's not applied in the same way for American stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to. I think this is a good sort of transition to talk about your film Failed State a little bit, and what we were talking off mic about how I watched these films in relation to one another and saw a lot of parallels. So for folks who haven't seen the movie, because it's screening all over, but you're still looking for distribution, or where is it kind of right now?
I think it's probably going to hit somewhere fairly obvious to my life sometime this year.
Great.
So that.
Great.
Nice.
Also, if whoever's listening, if you do want to see this, you can easily find me and contact me, and I will help you see it.
He's a very helpful man.
He is, yeah. It's
an extraordinary film. It's about a guy named Dale, who's a real guy that you've worked with, who's a messenger in New York City, and sort of follows him as he is doing his messenger job and trying to have some kind of a life amidst this like constant work, a social life. And it's about a guy sort of breaking down under the weight of work, and specifically he's got an unseen boss who sounds suspiciously like Solid Snake, who just doesn't give a shit about him and is always putting these demands on him while he is running around New York City, the New York area. So it's a bustling metropolis, not Prague, but it's got its own sort of psychologically terrifying architecture, in my opinion. And a guy whose sort of brain starts breaking under the weight of this. And so I think that your film does a great job of maybe kind of realigning that this depiction we're talking about of like, in films about capitalism or capitalist states, like each individual actor is generally not connected to this broader plan, in this case to basically just like immiserate and extract labor and resources and adrenochrome, whatever, from an underclass. Like that's not usually how it's depicted, but I think in Failed State, the connection between all these people is a lot clearer to me, and resembles more what you're talking about with like films about communist states where all the bad guys are working toward the same goal in a way that they aren't outside of a Soderbergh film. Am I onto something here? Do you make the connection between your own film and Kafka that we're talking about today?
Not until you brought it up like an hour ago.
Yes.
But it kind of made sense, again, because I think similar to Ian, read it pretty early, and I'm like, oh, this is both dense, both fun, very easy to read, kind of in a style that I felt a relation to. It was fairly funny and ridiculous, but also took itself seriously and was about something. Mm-hmm. And then if I think about Failed State in particular, following a guy who's a delivery person, and then part of it is infused documentary following Dale doing this job that he really does, and then writing ridiculous job deliveries or circumstances to deliver maybe regular things, but writing all of these and making them sillier, more ridiculous, and seeing that kind of relate to Kafka, where maybe it's not one-to-one, but Kafka having to go contact this one person, but you can't contact this one person because they're over there. And how do I get over there? Well, in order to get over there, you have to go over here. And I kind of, again, we're talking about the term Kafkaesque, but like you call to cancel a service and it's like, oh, we're going to send you this bill and then you have to sign it and you do have to pay an extra $20 cancellation fee. That exact thing is in the movie, and it's something that I kind of dealt with, but that was always fun. And I never really look back to be like, oh yeah, that's that's probably Kafka seeds in me that I then took. And they grew and they're in my fingers, I guess. I don't know.
Finger seeds.
Right, finger seeds. Yeah. They always warned us about this with the watermelons. Remember that Rugrats episode that scared the shit out of me?
Yeah. And you know my passion for telling people that they should eat watermelon seeds. They're very healthy for you.
He's always telling
real campaign of mine.
He's always telling people to eat stuff that they don't.
I'm serious about this, but
they're hiding our nutrients in the potting, so they're suppressing our medicine.
They just throw them out. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. Dale, look. One of the things you realize as you become an adult is the people that you made fun of for asking dumb questions, you find yourself suddenly sympathizing with them because you're put into the same position. It's the most boring question in the world to say, like, Dale, where'd you find this guy? He's incredible. I feel like something that people have been saying for like 100 years to directors. Yeah. But guess what? Dale, where'd you find this guy? He's incredible. He's so good at the movie. Not that Kafka is particularly known for his naturalism or something, but I was also, of course, thinking about the two films side by side, seeing them in such close proximity. And Dale just has so many moments, like he's giving instructions, subway instructions to somebody on the train. It's like they're like kind of talking past each other, and the instructions are like kind of arcane, but also he doesn't understand why the other guy doesn't understand him. Right. There's like an early Kafka story.
Well, the other guy then does explain that he has like 4 live prescriptions for Klonopin.
Right. But that's what I mean. Like they're just having like distinct conversations, basically. And there's I think maybe the earliest Kafka story called Descriptions of a Struggle is like about this a lot. It's like a, Kafka style protagonist hanging out with this kind of like Chad guy who makes out with a bunch of girls at a party, and then they go wander around the city and they aren't really understanding each other in their desires and the things they're expressing. And even, Dale walking into a building, just a wonder. He's like, this was like a spell that took me back to New York. It was so powerful. But he's like saying like, oh, this time like I'm picking up from Claudia. But they don't hear him, so he says it again, which I think is like so good to me. To me, this is like where it's really shown. Lots of great things about the film, but I enjoyed seeing somebody like struggle, not even in just like you're saying the like paying a bill, but the administration doesn't exist anymore, or something kind of like arcane bureaucratic way, just in like daily life to express the things that would make life worth living, and instead the majority of his life is this other stuff that becomes dominant. And I think it's very nice.
Yeah. Thank you. Dale's great. He reminds me of a person that I grew up with, like a small town kind of guy that you don't really see very often. And I do like having these moments like that where, he makes sort of a playful, familiar joke, like I'm picking up this time, and they don't hear him, and it's like, gotta say it again, Yeah. Normally, I would be so insecure because I'm already insecure to make a joke like that.
Right.
And then, of course, if I were to do it, they wouldn't hear, and then I'd have to, say it again. Yeah. But Dale doesn't care, and whatever, he flows, and that's why we love him. But I love those kinds of moments, and I try to, whenever I can, recreate conditions to get those kinds of real life, weird, uncomfortable, but very humane, soulful interactions, or little, I don't know if tick is the right word, but, something like that. And Dale is really perfect for all of those things to happen. And I met him because I was in college and I was on MySpace in a Arrested Development fan group.
Great.
And I think I was a sophomore in film school. And the moderator of the group was like, I'm producing a short film. We need extras. So if anybody's in the New York area, come. And I was thinking that I should probably be on a set. And I think it was NYU. So I was like, oh, probably better than us. So let me see what's going on. And I think it was the master's program too. So it's like, okay, it's not a real set, but you'll feel a little, So I went on that, and I brought a friend that I grew up with, and we just went and we're extras, and Dale was there. And I met Dale, he was talking a lot, and it became funny to us how much he was like talking, and he was like talking to this other extra, and they were really hitting it off. I was like, oh, it's so funny. He's a really interesting guy. 2 years later, I worked on a music video, And Dale was an extra. I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm like, oh, I remember you from things. Like, yeah, I thought you looked familiar. And then a year later, I worked on something else, and another guy from the Arrested Development fan thing was there. And I was like, that's so weird. Do these guys just all like do that?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Dale wasn't there, but then he showed up when we were outside already done. I guess he was late. And I was like, what the fuck? So I found him on, I think, Facebook, and I was casting for my friend's film, and we needed a guy, and I was like, what do you think about this guy? It's really interesting. And we ended up casting him, so I spent even more time with him, and I was like, if you could just write a movie around him,
right,
that would do it. And I did end up writing a few short films for him, and we worked together, and I was writing something probably similar to like a Brazil or a Kafka kind of thing. And I couldn't figure it out. It was supposed to have Dale in it. And then I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do something else. And then COVID happened and it was over. You know, I thought I was going to die. I thought we were all going to die, and I didn't want to do film anymore. But then I noticed that as we started to learn a little bit more, I saw that Dale was still delivering. He didn't stop. He was still going out. Yeah. And then my co-director and DP, Mitch, was just going around shooting because he wasn't getting any work. And he was just like, I have nothing else to do. And when that happened, I talked to them both. I was like, would you maybe want to do this? Like, keep doing what you're both doing, except do it together. And let's see if we have anything.
Right.
And they did that. And a lot of that stuff is in the film still, where Mitch is just following around Dale doing his regular job stuff on an actual day. And once we got that footage back, I cut it together. Mitch and I were talking, and I ended up, I did have an idea for a documentary following around Dale. And I thought about that a lot, and I took notes on that. And I ended up taking stuff from the script I was writing for him originally, putting that in this one, taking the documentary approach, ideas, putting them all together. And we just shot for like a year and a half, and I was editing as we went, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't.
Ooh, Soderbergh style.
Yeah, very, I really do appreciate how he does stuff, because it's really how you have to do stuff on the micro budget level.
Right.
And, you always hear about the one for me, one for them, one for me, and then I'm just going to do what I want. And then you think about yourself not having a lot of money and then having this very expensive art form.
Yeah.
And you're like, but these guys make so much money. I feel like if they wanted to do something cool, they could and put it out, and it would be...
Yeah, like where are those George Lucas garage experimental films he said he was going to do with his $4 billion,
Yeah. And anybody can do that. And I guess Megalopolis is... I haven't seen that yet, but I guess it's somewhat similar. He
did one for him. I love Megalopolis. It's nuts.
But it's self-funded, isn't it?
Yeah, he sold his winery basically, which that's a type of self-funding that isn't available to basically one man. But,
right. Yeah. But those kinds of filmmakers who do that all the time, and really Soderbergh is kind of doing that. He's still trying to market them, and he's able to cast Lucy Liu or something like that.
Right.
But he's very curious and will take these leaps and do these things and spend a lot of time working on it. And you kind of have to do that as a micro-budget filmmaker.
Yeah.
I already like these kinds of films, so it's pretty easy to figure out how to do them. And it's just going to take as long as it takes, and that's that. Yeah. And he's the only one who's constantly kind of experimenting and trying things new and being like, I can just shoot on an iPhone, keep costs down, and that'll be interesting to me, and I'll put it out or whatever,
It's funny because he is so constantly interested and innovating, but then also such an entertainer, where the thing he is making on the shooting on an iPhone is a very
straightforward,
recognizable psychological thriller, which I like Unsane. I think it's and I suspect that may have been part of the calculation. The same thing with Avatar, where James Cameron's the story has to go down smooth because the rest of it is so crazy.
I think he said a very similar thing about Kafka in that LA Times piece that you sent me.
He calls it like a challenging entertainment.
Yeah, he says that this isn't like an art film. This is entertainment. This is like for the masses, which is obviously, I get where he's coming from. I think it's fairly palatable, but you can also see like why he might want to include those elements, because he's doing so many things that were challenging to people. In some ways, I think people are probably more accepting of like an intentional black and white now than they were in the early 90s, because it's sort of like, you know, we know that people can make these choices and it doesn't mean that it's going to be a 1950s style film or something.
Right.
So yeah, I get where he's coming from, and I think it's funny that he gets in bed, like, to, you know, Stuart Kornfeld, the guy who produced this, or one of the guys who produces this, he had produced The Elephant Man and The Fly, and he was like,
he brought those both to Mel Brooks. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Is that true?
Mel Brooks is the reason that he's the reason David Lynch got off the ground, and also Mel Brooks, I believe, produced The Fly because of his his connection to Corman, or to the Vincent Price of it all. Yeah. But yeah, bizarre connection there.
Yeah, I mean, but it makes sense that he's sort of drawn to this as like a, you know, semi-surreal project. I do think that Cronenberg and Lynch are the guys who maybe do surrealism the best of mainstream filmmakers, right? And I think part of the reason they succeed is because in true surrealist fashion, the people in the film are trying to resolve what's happening, trying to make sense of the world, but they also feel like a part of it. I think they don't feel like an outsider. You know, we don't feel like the protagonist. You know, I love Eraserhead. Eraserhead is a bizarre film, but to the character, it both like kind of makes sense, and he's confused by stuff, but not so confused that he thinks this is like impossible nonsense, right? But I also think it's funny to me in Sexualized Videotape, the book, Soderbergh talks about a Lynch script that he really, really likes, called One Saliva Bubble, that is like the goofiest Lynch script you can imagine. That I believe the first line of dialogue in the film is from guard number 1, who is telling a story and says, "So she said to him, poo poo on your pee-pee." And that's that's like the stuff that Soderbergh is like, you know, he's like enjoying Lynch, but also just likes like a dumb joke.
I'm going to have to hear line number 2. That's, you got to keep going. Yeah, that is, I think, what is so fascinating about Failed State and about Dale too. It's like he is of this world. He's very much like, he's at once like we connect to this guy, and I relate to this. Like, I feel for this man, and at the same time I am at a remove from him because he's such a character. And like, first of all, how's Dale doing? Is he good? Mm-hmm. I worried about him at the end.
No, he texted me the other day. He
good.
sends me really funny text messages.
That's great.
He's fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Great. But like, he is, you know, he's his own special thing, his own, like, he's on his own wavelength, and is of this strange world that he is a part of, and also like obviously separated from it and experiencing it in a different way than most of the other people interacting with it. And like that, there is it's funny how you're like, this sort of half documentary feels so surreal, and like you get to, I mean, I assume this part was part of this is from the documentary portion of the process, but there's a guy on the bus who is talking to Dale and thinks he's homeless, and Dale says, "No, I'm a messenger." And the guy's like, "Oh, you mean like a prophet?" Like, first of all, like, if you had written that,
right,
it'd be a little on the nose. But like, you know, he's like, "No, I'm bringing a box uptown or whatever."
Yeah. I love that. It's so insane because you get away with it. You know, it's like,
you can include that because this guy is clearly like saying that off the dome. Yeah.
I am obsessed with that. Like, my second film has a breakdown and becomes a documentary, and it starts with the like a goat birth. And my friend was giving me like editing notes at the time of a cut, and he's like, "Okay, this is like pretty obvious. You're like rebirth of the film, and there's a goat birth." But it's like, yeah, you were there and you filmed the goat birth. Are you not going to put it in? Like, it's you put it in. Come on, you get away with it. Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that was just like, oh my God, this is so weird how well it fits. And it's just the way, not even just like the relationship you have with footage like that. Like, we know this is documentary, right? And like, usually you're some percent correct about that. But just the way it's like the way the performance, whatever, the interaction is played, you're like, this feels real and off the cuff. So you get to have these things, and it's so strange that this directly applies to the script in a way, again, you're like a prophet,
Yeah.
Never in a million years would I be able to get away with writing that. Even myself, where it's like, you can't do that. Do not put that in the script.
Right.
And he does kind of, he's got a
messianic.
He's got a messianic look.
Yeah.
And then there's just I am simply going to, they say glaze? Is this what the young people say?
That. Yeah.
There's a shot of a baseball getting hit very well that made me like verklempt. That really just choked me up. This beautiful shot of a baseball being hit properly. That little stuff like that sneaks up on you. A good movie. That's gets the podcasty seal of approval.
If I can ask the other sort of obvious question of you, Chris, as somebody who's made a couple different pieces now, what do you feel? Obviously, you didn't become like an overnight, once in a lifetime sensation person who changed Hollywood. Few do, right? Like a Soderbergh, but
yet, obviously.
Yeah. But what do you feel making a second or a third work? Obviously, kind of like Soderbergh, you're switching between, sort of like a television, a more drawn out medium versus another piece of film, kind of mixing documentary and fiction. Do you find yourself with a desire to do things better? Do you want to do different stuff? Like you want to play around with things you didn't get to do? What motivates you? Or you just like, it just depends on the story you're trying to tell? What's in your mind?
I mean, that's kind of a hard question because everything is kind of going at once, where it's like, okay, so Miss Mia is an archival doc thing, and that took me years to just like kind of B-side, side project do. And I'm doing stuff like that, which is also going to take a long time. And then finding people to write a story about and then having them commit. I don't know why they do it, but they will, like people who are like, they don't have an acting reel, whatever, but they want to be part of this. That's very difficult. That takes a lot of time. So, those are kind of in the works. And then it's like the pure script stuff. I've done 2 horror shorts and I'm writing a horror feature now. And that is like a lot more. It still has that element of, I'm keeping it open for doc playing around kind of thing, but it's a lot less. And it's scary to watch something like Kafka because it is more in line with like, okay, like we're settled down and I'm doing something more formal, more constructed. Yep. And the perk is that I have no success whatsoever, so I don't have anything to worry about, so it's not just
I certainly wouldn't say that. I mean, you have several films that have been in festivals, this is like real stuff.
Yeah, but like,
maybe lower expectations than coming off of Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Yes. Yeah. But I feel Soderbergh too, when he's like trying to do these things, but he's still doing something very entertaining. We're definitely still different filmmakers with different tastes and that kind of thing. But I do see where he's coming from, where it's like he's kind of a small businessman, or he's thinking about the business, and I'm like, not really, because I was never ever a part of it, and maybe he was thrust into being a part of that. I'm not sure where that stuff is more real to him. But there is like a weird bitter pill of just being like, I really enjoy these things that I'm able to do, but it seems like, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe things are going to happen for me that I have no conception of. I don't think that's the case, but people really do love movies, but they still only watch things with people they are familiar with, like actors and stuff like that.
Right.
And I've never really done that. I've never really worked with. I mean, as you said, in Failed State, David Hayter is the voice of the boss who played the boss in Metal Gear Solid, who played Solid Snake, and that is like, the biggest person I've ever worked with, and this is just like a voiceover, So I would like to do something like that as well. And I do kind of feel like that would, a lot of people do not really, they kind of pat you on the head for doing your own thing. It's very limited. But if you were like to say, I'm shooting a film, it's all going to be in one take, but I do have Lucy Liu and it costs this amount of money. So like, why don't you try putting in theaters? Like, that'd be a very exciting thing to try. And I see why he does that. He's like less experimental, more like, this one's going to have Michael Cera in it. This one's going to have like so-and-so. So we have that element of people are going to want to see this because like I recognize that
audience
person
draw.
into it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a bitter pill. That's something I always like knew, but I didn't realize how many cinephiles self-proclaimed like cared so much less about American micro budget and more like this person as an actor, like that's what I'm driven to see. And that's maybe a little more crude to put it because I do find myself personally thinking somewhere along those lines of just like, I'm tired. I'm just gonna, I ate my vegetables right now. I need this. As a guy who watches anime and stuff, and I would fight for anime, but how much would that apply to this? Where it's like, I need to see Goku right now. Sorry, had a long day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Gotta check in. Would you ever work with him?
I would love to try. I'm more of a Vegeta guy, but that could be harder.
Wow.
It could be a lot harder to do.
Yeah.
You like a transformation story, right? This like growth and personality. That's good.
Yeah.
If it's okay, I have a related question.
Sure. Yeah, that's
mean,
great, Kim. Thanks for jumping. I kind of forgot you're here with us.
Is poop the sophomore slump of pee?
What do you mean?
I
guess
like a number two thing.
In fairness to her, these are the types of things you can't solve by being a computer. You have to. You have to ask about this kind of thing.
You need to have a body, in order to learn these things.
I would hate. Like, I feel that's so disrespectful to poop, to think of it as a sophomore slump.
I guess, but maybe that's like Kafka. Like, if you're coming off of, man, I really love to pee.
It's more formally
next?
rigid, you're saying. Yeah.
Well, inshallah. not in my case.
Yeah.
And this vegan protein powder sometimes can really...
Disgusting.
Anyway.
That does remind me, though. I guess I appreciate it in that sense.
Someday I will poop.
Oh, okay.
Good for you. Yeah.
That's what.
We were talking about planning and looking forward to like building towards something.
Yeah.
Build toward. I guess we do that every day, and we take it for granted. We build
sure do.
Number two, and Kimmy can't.
Tim Apple is helping me to try.
Okay.
Good for
It's
you.
nice of him.
I've kind of wondered what he's been up to. Yeah.
Did you guys know that? You guys remember that Trump invented calling him Tim Apple?
Of course.
People forget this.
I'm an historic monster, but that is the type of thing that is funny.
Yeah. So funny.
So the thing I was going to ask you, Kim, you reminded me, Chris. Do you look back at your completed works and, do you ever feel as harsh as Steven Soderbergh seems to feel about some of his stuff? I mean, obviously,
is there a Mr. Neff in your future?
Yeah, exactly. Would you ever say like, if I could do it again, or I might do it again, I might recut or something?
No. Yeah, I definitely like get embarrassed about older stuff where I like can't watch it. I would say like the newer stuff I can sit and watch in the theater. I'd prefer not to, but if I had to.
Yeah.
Although Miss Me Yet played in Chicago and we arrived late, but we also arrived too early. And I had to like watch like 40 minutes of it. I was like, come on, I don't want to do this. But that's like, when you're editing yourself, it's like, definitely. I can't do this. But re-editing, no, probably not. I mean, I'll say this, I do want to, at some point, maybe do a remaster of The Winds That Scatter, like a different color grade, because that's something that we did on our own that, I think we can improve on that. And in that sense,
it's a very Soderbergh instinct as well.
Very Soderbergh. We haven't really talked about it, so we can't say too much because we haven't seen it. It's not available, but Soderbergh recut this film as a new work that he calls Mr. Neff with a K, that is a silent version of the film with subtitles and music that he's color coded different parts of it in a very Soderbergh way.
Cut like 20 minutes of the film, I think, is like down to an hour 10 or something.
He shot some inserts during the production of Side Effects.
Yeah.
And he's added music, including apparently an instrumental version of Enter Sandman.
I saw that. Yeah.
And he's been working on it since 2013. That's when he shot Side Effects. So,
and supposedly, I don't know if it's just the name or the article I read said it eliminates all mentions of Kafka because the character is called Mr. Neff. Now, I don't know if it also eliminates like talking about his stories and stuff.
Apparently, he's like sort of working backwards, like those. Like that video of Creed where it makes it look like they're playing terribly and just going like it's the subtitles are like worked backwards from what it looks like the mouths are saying in some cases.
Okay.
Anyway, it's played some festivals.
Speaking of like anime translation,
exactly
often what they have to do. Yeah.
Supposedly, it's intended for a major Blu-ray box set of some of his early stuff that was at some point somebody said it was going to come out in 2021. So it's up in the air, but we thank you, Mr. Soderbergh, for giving us a free Patreon idea for whenever that comes out.
Yeah.
One of our late period highs of Paul Schrader was talking about Dark, his recut version of the film.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
Dark
this can be rich stuff.
Really quite something. Yeah, so I hope that it's maybe Soderbergh's version of Dark. Although this movie is not as bad as Dying of the Light.
No,
yeah, I mean,
no.
So I saw Dark, I think last summer or something.
Okay.
But my whole time I was just like, and I didn't see Dying of Light yet, but I was like, how good can it be? Like, I don't get it. And then I watched them both, and I was like, "Oh, Dark's it's so much better.
It's so much better."
Dying of the Light is like
crazy.
it's like an abandoned. It's like it sort of feels like when they put in something weird in like a closed like Sports Authority or something, where they put in like one of those
it's like a
Instagram museums or something. Yeah, we're like, well, this is pretty cool relative to what it was. You know?
Yeah. But I would say Mr. Neff does not sound like it would be good. But
interesting. Okay.
I'm still going to see it, and you know, I still like Kafka, and I'll say that. But yeah, all of the things, just like, oh, I did this and I did this, and I was like, that doesn't sound like it's going to be good, but yeah, I'll watch it.
It sounds like he's eliminating a lot of what makes the film. So I guess I'm curious what the new film is about.
Once we've talked about George Lucas, because I can't help it, but you know, I do appreciate that he is not saying this is like Kafka special edition. He's titled it something else. This is a new work. He's sort of doing like an archival work based on his own assets, which is very dark. Like, you know, Schrader literally like filmed a TV playing the Blu-ray of the work print and stuff.
And it's kind of in keep it. We've made these oblique references to Max Brod not burning Kafka's work and stuff. But I mean, one of the strange things about reading Kafka is you realize that you're reading like somebody's translation of a draft that they decided was maybe the best draft. And then they also took some pieces from a different draft. And then there's works like America that are just like totally cobbled together. And then something like The Castle where it's...
You're telling me, buddy.
Yes, exactly.
You know, because it's political commentary.
The Castle ends like mid-sentence. Like
the Castle previous translation too had an ending. And then the version of Castle I read in the intro, they're like, nah, it should end where he ended it in the middle of a sentence, which is like such a sick fucking ending. But
I think so too. Yeah.
You know, he didn't finish it, which is funny because now we're talking about, Soderbergh recut Kafka, and it's like, it's very much in line in how this was all brought to us, you know.
Fascinating. It all gives me hives to think about how I don't know which version of the thing is the thing, you know?
Sure.
We have one final little piece of business to attend to here. This is, of course, our segment Going Haywire, which Kimmy will explain.
Now it's time for Going Haywire, the part of the show where we pick which character from the film we'd most like to see overdubbed by actress Laura San Giacomo.
So we haven't thought of anything better yet, and this is what we do as the closing segment, where we, in Haywire fashion, what character do you think would be best overdubbed by actress Laura San Giacomo? New Jersey's own. I'm going to just jump right out and say I think not only should she overdub him here, but I think all appearances by Sir Alec Guinness, Star Wars, the Ealing comedies, Brownface, Lawrence of Arabia mode, I think Laura San Giacomo should do a full overdub of Alec Guinness's career. That's how I feel.
That's strong. That's very strong.
Thank you. I think it would be interesting because he's like, would she do an impression the way Ewan McGregor did?
Yeah.
Would she just do her own voice? What would she choose to do? That's something I want to know from LSG. Ian, what about you?
I think it would be easy to pick the like goofy characters. Your Simon McBurney. I think she would. That would just ratchet up the nonsense of it. But I actually think that the best pick would be Mr. Bizzlebeck because he's from space and he's a bizarre character. I think to have him it's just like, because a lot of what he says is kind of like straight in the sense that he's just like complimenting Kafka and talking about how much he loves the ladies, how much he does it all for the ladies. So to have Laura San Giacomo come in here, I mean, he has a line like,
Mr.
what else?
Bizzlebeck would be one of he'd be fit right in with the Kings of Tampa
He would,
at the Magic Mike Club, I think.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's probably my pick.
Okay. Chris, what about you? It's a very important segment.
I know, man. I was like, do I have enough time to come up with an answer?
Sure.
Funny.
Funny?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
You're right. Yeah.
It's very serious.
I don't know. Narrate. Should do be the narrator. That'd
be good.
Yeah. Nothing.
Insert a narrator, I think, would help, actually. Because apparently Soderbergh says parts of the movie are supposed to be in Kafka's head.
Well, we get him doing we didn't even talk about Kafka. The true closing of this film is him composing a very famous letter that he actually wrote called Dearest Father. Yeah. It's like 100-page letter. Apparently never sent it. It's very interesting to read. You guys should check it out. Yeah, to have her be his own internal monologue, that would be really interesting. Kafka's vision of his own voice as a heavy New Jersey woman from Just Shoot Me.
Yeah, sort of sultry voiced. I think Kafka would have loved Veronica Mars. Anyway, that's been our episode on Kafka. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
we've talked a
you.
lot about Failed State. Everyone should check it out. Where can people find more of what you're doing? Check out the movie. How do we get into the Chris Bell universe?
I'm ready this time. I wrote it down.
Hell yeah.
So I have a Linktree. Christopher Jason Bell, no spaces. That's on Linktree. And you can find The Winds that Scatter. And you can find Miss Miette on Means TV. Miss Miette is free to watch. You don't need an account. You just watch it. Winds that Scatter, you gotta sign up. But I got a little deal for you. If you sign up with the coupon code Chris Bell, in caps, no spaces, you get 10% off. And some of that money goes to yours truly. So I'd appreciate it. I'm also, I'm on the board. I'm a co-op member. So it really does help us if people subscribe, because then we could do more cool stuff. But yeah, those are all the places. If you're still on the X Everything app, I'm on there too. Mm-hmm. But I might be, I'm an annoying person, and that is where I am annoying. So that's up to you, if that's what you want to see.
If you want to see
the movies.
The movies. But if you want to see that picture if you want to see that picture of Ryan Gosling looking at a mouse, you got to head on over to Chris's X account.
Yeah, if you could find it. I think I posted it last year. I'm the only one who ever did, So.
Go deep. Yeah.
I will say, on the anniversary.
My assumption about some of our listeners is that they must be very wealthy to be giving any kind of money to us. So, take some of that money. Bring it over to Means TV or to our friend Chris Bell. This is our first coupon code. I love a coupon code.
This is our first real coupon code. Yeah. Of course, we've had fake ones for...
many fake ones.
VPN VIP, of course, the VPN designed for viewing illegal pornography. But this is a real one. Yeah. Yep. Coupon code Chris Bell. Very exciting to have a coupon code.
My whole name. Yeah. Not the whole name, but like a version of it.
Ian has a stink tree.
Stink tree.
Bummer.
I kind of like when you come at us together. It feels like it brings me closer to Jake as a team. But when you come at just me, then it makes me wonder.
Hold on, she's thinking.
Jake is probably going to take his own life.
Hey, come on. Okay, that's totally
this is
out
a
of
practical
proportion.
Concern. Yeah. I see. Yeah.
Is this,
she has no sense of register, this computer
If anyone
lady.
is, if you're having suicidal thoughts, look at the... go to the phone number from the end of the movie Better Man. I don't remember what it is, but go check it out. Yeah. Okay. Good movie, Better Man. That's actually, you know what? I'm taking it back. Instead of the Laura San Giacomo thing, I think everyone in this movie should have a monkey head.
Okay.
And they should not address it.
I see.
That's my plug. Go check out Better Man. It's really good.
You've told me this. I'm surprisingly excited
did you see the
about
Robin Williams monkey movie?
No. I haven't seen it.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I'll definitely watch
check
that. My friend who hates most things said that was the one movie he saw this year that he really liked.
Just shockingly good reviews from people that I respect.
That's the best part of it also. Like it's an added bit that this movie is good. Like that's what makes it funny.
The old implicit bit. Yeah.
The implicit bit. All right. That is our episode on Kafka. We will be back to you in 2 weeks with King of the Hill.
King of the Hill.
He's finally
Yeah, he's finally the thing he's been putting
accessories.
off. Yeah, he's gonna do one of the things he promised to do.
And I will be working on my Boomhauer impression until then.
Okay.
And if you want more of the Pod Casty For Me goodness, go on over to patreon.com/podcastingforme. You'll get an episode in between then and now. We are holding out on you. We're doing psychological warfare. And with that, we thank you for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.